What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. Chris Pennell here. We're going with my final thoughts for week 6 of the NFL season for DraftKings and FanDuel. Thankfully, the power outage didn't last too long down here in Southwest Florida due to the hurricanes, so we're back for this weekend. And we'll be going position by position, talking cash games and stacks for tournaments. We'll build a lineup as we progress through this, more so for a single entry tournament build. Then at the end, I'll run my optimizer to see who's populating the most as of right now. And if you do end up enjoying today's video, do me a favor and leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. Let's dive right into it. And as always, we'll start with the quarterback position because this is the foundation of our lineups. The quarterback we select is always going to dictate, usually, depending on the quarterback you pick. I mean, if it's a more mobile quarterback, it's not going to completely dictate your lineup, but you know, if you have a pocket passer, like a Baker Mayfield, a Jared Goff, you're going a certain direction in your lineup. So it's going to let you know, am I going to be able to spend up at running back and wide receiver, or am I going to have to save some money? So if we are talking cash games this week, I do think there is one option I would play. It's Lamar Jackson. He is just in an absolute amazing spot. Versus the Washington Commanders, he's been incredible this year. And you can make a case for a couple of other guys, like Jaden Daniels is pretty much Lamar Jackson at a discount. He's been incredible this year as well. The floor is going to be there. They're going to be playing from behind. I mean, I think Jaden Daniels is obviously a fine option. Like, those are the top two guys in cash games. For me, they're the top two in projections as well. If you are not playing Lamar Jackson or Jaden Daniels in cash games, and I want to put an emphasis on you should be playing Lamar Jackson. Hurts, you can make a case for him as well versus Cleveland. The Cleveland defense, just Cleveland in general this year, is taking a big step down. Other than that, not really a huge fan of anybody else in cash. If you want to spend all the way down and fit in studs across your lineup, Spencer Rattler is an option. And I think just calling him an option is about the nicest thing I can say. But at $4,000, if he gets you 12 points, that is 3x, which is what I currently have him projected for. Like, do I expect him to have a great game? No, not really. I got him projected for around 200 passing yards. But if he gets 12.84 points, we're talking over 3x. Like, it's fine for cash games. In tournaments, I'd have a harder time getting there. But if you are playing cash just to fit in, like if you want to play Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara this week, that is 100% one way you can do that. It's probably the best way to do it, to be honest. But overall, as you can see, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels are going to be leading the way for me. But just talking about the other quarterbacks, because I mainly have interest in them in tournaments, we'll head over to the stack sheet here. And if you guys ever do want access to the entire NFL model with the projections, ownership projections, optimizer, cheat sheets, whatever, link is down below in the description or the pinned comment for that. Got all the data you want, and I just seem like this laid out, and you can look at projections and got to use every single week. Let's get into it here. I have this sorted by DraftKings salary and Philly coming in as the most expensive. And these are not all the teams, obviously. They're just the ones that I have some interest in that I want to talk about really quick. Yeah, Philly coming in expensive on both sites. Really expensive on FanDuel, really $8,000 for their average salary. But it makes sense. I mean, you have Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. It's a pretty expensive team to get to. I mean, Cleveland, I wouldn't say is the most pushover matchup in the world, but they've definitely regressed this season. And they do have a 26.5 implied team total. Over-under isn't that enticing, which because the Browns are just lower. But, I mean, the Philly offense should be able to do well. I'm just not overly excited about it, but I do have interest in their pieces. It's just a matter of being able to afford them. Detroit and Dallas, that should be a banger of a game. Still at a 52-point over-under, which is one of the highest we have seen all season long. 27.5 total for Detroit, 25.5 for Dallas. We're going to be in a dome here, and both these teams project extremely well. I have a lot of interest in them for DFS purposes. Now, in terms of tournaments this week, it looks like I'm going to be getting to a little bit more Dallas just because of the price points. They're easier to afford. 6,800 average salary on FanDuel, 56 over on DK. Meanwhile, Detroit's at 6K and 7,300. Just a little bit easier to afford these Dallas pieces. And they're going to have some pretty chalky players. I think Dak Prescott will be one of the higher owned quarterbacks of the week. And Jake Ferguson's looking like one of the chalkiest players of the entire week. Him and Bijan Robinson, CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver, and Jalen Tolbert. Like, nothing really not to like about this Dallas offense, and it's a good matchup versus Detroit. Should be back and forth track meet. I want all the pieces of this game I can handle in tournaments. And if you look at the stack scores here, quarterback, wide receiver, tight end is the highest for Dallas overall amongst this group. Also the second highest at quarterback and wide receiver, and second for quarterback and tight end, which Baltimore's kind of cheating because they have two viable tight ends with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. They're really, Dallas is just kind of top in the charts for me. So a lot of interest there. And they were my first look video. That's the stack that I ended up rolling with for that vid. In Green Bay and Arizona, not too much interest in the Arizona side of things for me, but I do like the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love. 27.5 point implied team total here. Pretty healthy, 47-point over-under. And if you look at the stack scores, they're pretty much right there with Dallas as being the top options. They have the best quarterback, wide receiver. As, I mean, it looks like everyone's going to be healthy this week. We're still waiting on news for Christian Watson, but Romeo Dobbs is going to be back. Christian Watson, you also have Jaden Reed. Tavian Wiggs, Tucker Kraft, got the full allotment there. So hard not to like them overall. Pretty good matchup versus Arizona. And I don't mind going right back to Jordan Love this week after he kind of disappointed last weekend. Baltimore-Washington is going to be an extremely popular game as well. 30.5 implied team total for Baltimore, which is the highest of the week by a decent margin. Washington's down there at 22.5. So not a ton of interest in the Washington offense outside of Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. Those are the two best. And then I also don't mind Zach Ertz, which we'll talk about when we get to tight ends. But Baltimore, for me, it's Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, and Derrick Henry. I mean, those are the big three. Those are the three that I'll be jamming into a lot of lineups this weekend. And they do have the top overall stack, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end score of the week, which makes sense. High supply team total, soft spot versus Washington. They've been struggling on defense for the past couple of seasons now, so I don't think it's going to stop here. And then I have a lot of interest in these Atlanta Falcons this week, and even also on the Carolina side of things. Like, this is probably going to be the chalkiest game overall. Kirk Cousins will have some ownership. I'm currently projecting him in the top 5 for quarterbacks. Bijan Robinson has a good chance of being the highest owned player in the slate, definitely at running back. And then Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod are going to pick up ownership as well. On the other side, Chuba Hubbard and Deontay Johnson. Like, this is going to end up being a very popular game, but it's got a 47-point over-under. Both these teams are not that expensive. Atlanta's coming in at 5,600 overall. Decent implied team total. And if you're looking at the stack projections, they don't look bad at all for that price point. I mean, looking at their projections, we have Kirk Cousins at nearly 19 fantasy points, Bijan Robinson at 17. Even though Jarrett gets a little bit of love. Drake London at 16.4, Mooney at 13.1, McLeod at 10, Pitts at 9. I mean, at these price points, yeah, that looks really nice. And another stack that I don't think is going to pick up too much ownership is this Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Kate Otten, however you want to stack that up. If I was playing Baker, I'd want 2 pass catchers. So really just any combination of those two between those 3 players, I think is perfectly fine. Now, we do have to monitor the injury news, or status, I should say, on Rachaad White. He's looking like a bit of a game-time decision if he happens to miss. Bucky Irving is only $5,400, and you'll probably end up seeing him one of the more popular plays on the entire slate if so. All right, moving over to our lineup. As I always say, just quick disclaimer. I know you're probably tired of hearing it, but oh well. Don't copy and paste this, guys. That's not the purpose of this video. We're trying to be better DFS players, and by doing that, we have to learn and understand why we do the things that we do. So this is for an example of a single-entry type build. And this is how I would build for it. So typically I'd pick a quarterback, I'd get a couple pass catchers with him, and sometimes I do a run back option if I like the game environment. So for this build specifically, we're going to go with Lamar Jackson because I went with Dak Prescott earlier in the week. Now when we play Lamar Jackson, we don't necessarily have to stack with him, and we definitely don't have to get 2 pass catchers with him. Now personally, I am going to get one of his guys with him later on in this video, and I think I will do a run back option just because this game has such a high total. I think it can be back and forth. More so in Baltimore's favor, but I do think Washington can put up a fight. So we'll roll with Lamar, then we'll move on to running back. All right, so a bit of a list here, and I do want to mention, we just got news. So as I was recording the stacks part, I said, well, if Rachaad White is out, Bucky Irving will probably end up being one of the more popular plays in the entire slate. Well, Rachaad White just got listed as a game-time decision, but also as doubtful, so I think it's safe to assume he's going to miss this game. So Bucky Irving now down there at $5,400. We'll get to him, but yeah, he's going to be I think an excellent choice, at least in cash games. So speaking of cash games, well, I have not yet ran the updated ownership projections, but I did have Bijan Robinson leading the way. That could change. It might sway towards Bucky Irving. I think people have always wanted to play him. Now with Rachaad White being out, I mean, we can all kind of jump on the train here versus New Orleans Saints, who are going to be without their starting quarterback. But yeah, Bijan Robinson, he's kind of in the nut spot. And if he does not produce here, I would say it's probably time to sound the alarm bells. Really cheap on DK at $6,600. FanDuel's a bit tougher, $8,500, but a really decent implied team total here for the Falcons. 6-point favorites, so not at home, but really nice spot versus the Carolina Panthers, who are allowing the second most points per game. 2 fantasy running backs this year, nearly 2 rushing touchdowns per game. It'd be kind of hilarious if Tyler Algier gets like 2 rushing touchdowns and Bijan Robinson does not, and once again crumbles, but we will see what happens. Still getting 17 opportunities per game, but we'd like to see that around 20 this weekend. By $6,600, you'd kind of expect him to be the chalk running back. Bucky Irving, now $5,400 with Rachaad White, more than likely going to be out. He has been efficient with his touches this year at 5.6 yards per carry, and this Tampa Bay offense can definitely do some damage. 22.5 implied team totals. I mean, it's not expecting fireworks here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but the potential is there, and I'd say there's a decent chance we'll get at least a couple of goal line cracks at it if we get that rushing touchdown. $5,400. Just too cheap for a starting running back in that offense when the other one happens to be out. If you are looking to spend up, Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara would be my favorites. I think I have a slight lean towards Derrick Henry, which is not something I would usually say. I usually always side with the PPR back, but I trust the Baltimore offense just a little bit more this week. I don't know what we're going to get with Spencer Rattler under center. Less than a 20-point implied team total here for the New Orleans Saints. 30.5 for the Baltimore Ravens. They're 7-point favorites. They're at home. Great matchup versus the Washington Commanders, and Derrick Henry has been an absolute beast this year. He's actually averaging the rushing bonus per game this season, 19 attempts on the ground. You get a little bit through the air, 1.6 targets, but we're not really caring about that with Derrick Henry. We care about rushing touchdowns and volume. That's something he has been getting in Baltimore, 6 yards per carry this year, which I realize is probably skewed a bit from the 80-yard rip he had versus the Buffalo Bills on the opening play. But I mean, there's really not much not to like about Derrick Henry. The floor can be lower when he doesn't get that rushing touchdown, but Vegas is implying roughly around a 70% chance for rushing touchdown this week, and I'm not going to oppose that. Kamara, like I said, like PPR upside is fantastic, but I'm a little bit concerned about the offense this weekend with Rattler. I love the passing attack in Detroit and Dallas, but if you're trying to get off of that chalk a bit, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Rico Dowdle, all fine options. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, they both get enough opportunities to be able to make it work. I believe Montgomery's averaging roughly around 18 this season, and Jahmyr Gibbs is close to 20. Now in DraftKings, you get the PPR upside with Gibbs. He's averaging 5.5 catches per game on 6.5 targets. A lot to like over there. I don't think the ownership's going to be too high either. So it's one way to get exposure to this game without really breaking yourself in the ownership category. Josh Jacobs is a fine pivot off the passing attack in Green Bay, kind of the same premise as what we talked about with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Good spot versus Arizona. He's a very boring play, but he should get you close to 20 opportunities, which is all we can ask for if you're around $6,000. If you are spending down, it was going to be Chuba Hubbard and Tony Pollard as the chalkier options. I still think they will have ownership, but Bucky Irving is going to sway some away from those two, but both are in fine spots. Chuba Hubbard's been fantastic in recent weeks. They are 6-point dogs versus Atlanta. I mean, it's not the absolute best game script for Chuba, but we can get some double offs, which he has been involved in the passing game this year. He is getting 4.5 targets per game and nearly the same exact amount of receptions. And then Tony Pollard, I know he's a bit washed. Only 4 yards per carry this season, but the opportunities are there. Close to 20 per game this season. And it's a good spot versus the Colts. And Rico Dowdle, I don't mind on FanDuel. He is really cheap over there. Now Bucky Irving, before I knew Rachaad White was going to end up being out, Rico Dowdle looked like a fantastic cheap option, only $6,100 because, I mean, he's almost $1,500 than Chuba Hubbard. And while I would project Chuba Hubbard to be better, I mean, that's a big price difference for a guy that I don't think is going to project extremely different. But now Bucky Irving, I mean, he's probably the best play on both sides. At running back, whenever you can get value at the running back position, you tend to try to take that. All right, moving back over to our build here. Probably have to save a little bit of money since we went with an expensive quarterback. And I know the stacking options would be like Zay Flowers, roughly in the mid 6K range. Same with Terry McLaurin. If you want to do the run back, so I don't think we're going to be able to afford, say, an Alvin Kamara, which I don't even feel like I need to do that anyway. So Bijan Robinson, I still think is in our price range at $6,600. And since I'm not going with Kirk Cousins, I'm not going to go a full-blown Atlanta passing stack. I'm not going to rule out playing one of the pass catchers because the value range of wide receiver is just not that great this week. So we'll play Bijan, and then we'll just throw in Bucky down there at $5,400, and then we'll move on to receivers. And as usual, a pretty long list here, but we can always try to simplify this by staying within your lane. Like if you have Dak Prescott, you're immediately looking right at CeeDee Lamb. You're looking at Jalen Tolbert because if you have Dak Prescott, he's not going to go out there. He's not going to get you 80 on the ground. You're not going to get 2 rushing touchdowns like Lamar Jackson can do or Jaden Daniels. If he's going to score fantasy points, his pass catchers are scoring fantasy points. So CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Tolbert, Jake Ferguson, those are going to be the main threats for that this weekend. So you try to correlate your lineups as best as possible. You have Baker Mayfield. Baker's not getting 30 points by himself. He's getting some help. And the help he is receiving that from is Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Kate Otten. These points got to flow through somewhere, and you can make this easier on yourself. Like, sure, you can play Baker with CeeDee Lamb and Jaden Reed, but you're making it more difficult on yourself because those guys have nothing to do with each other. Like if Baker Mayfield has a great game, well, like I said, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin probably had great games with him potentially. CeeDee Lamb could have done well too, but I mean, let's just say Dak Prescott had a bad game that could affect CeeDee Lamb. Like it's all correlated. You try to stay within your lane. Now your entire lineup cannot be like this. I'm not saying to stack your entire lineup. I'm just saying try to simplify a couple positions for you to make things easier on yourself. Whenever you can make things easier for yourself, you should do it. You don't always have to overcomplicate things. Now, some guys that I like in cash games this week, outside of just stacking for tournaments, I really like the mid-range. Drake London, Zay Flowers, Terry McLaurin, all excellent options. I like Deontay Johnson as well at $6,100. I also really like Darnell Mooney, and they were all in line right there. So, yeah, London, Flowers, McLaurin, I guess Tank Dell threw a wrench into things there, but Johnson, Mooney, I think are some of the best cash game options on the entire slate. Like their game environments, I like their price points quite a bit. And also like Ray McLeod at $4,300. He's going to pick up some ownership, but all 3 wide receivers in that offense for Atlanta are going to have value as they have shown through the first 5 weeks. So I don't see any reason of that changing. I like the spot. First, the Carolina Panthers. If you are looking for some YOLO plays, Tim Patrick somewhat makes sense here at $3,300. The previous 2 weeks, he has played 50 and 40% of the snaps. Now, it's not like he's super involved. He's like 13th on the pecking order for targets in that offense. Is averaging 2 targets per game though, 6% target share, but healthy total in this game. A couple of balls go his way at $3,300. I mean, you could do worse in a pinch, but there's really just no value plays that I see at this position. I think Jacoby Myers is going to end up playing. If he didn't, I mean, Trey Tucker would make a lot of sense at $4,200, but I mean, I like Ray, but Bateman, Trey Tucker, Tim Patrick, like, I'm trying not to spend down, but if you absolutely have to, getting a wide receiver that plays at least around half the snaps and a high-powered offense this week, you could probably do worse than that. None of that, I think I pretty much mentioned everybody I wanted to. Although I didn't talk about the Texans wide receivers, no Nico Collins this week, and his target share is not just going to evaporate into the wind. Like, it's got to go somewhere. Now, this is not a game that I'm projecting for a ton for the Houston Texans offense. It's a 37.5 point over-under, lower total than usual for the Texans. And they're on the road in New England, just kind of an ugly game overall. But the targets are going to have to get redistributed somewhere. It might not be quite to that extreme because of the game environment. But Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell are going to get bumps here. And then Dalton Schultz maybe. Joe Mixon will be back, so it's going to help the run game out a little bit. But solid plays, but not the best game environment for sure. All right, back to our build here. Let's pair up Lamar Jackson with this wide receiver 1. We got Zay Flowers here at $6,500. Then right below him, we have Terry McLaurin, who makes a lot of sense for the run back option. Then we'll move on to tight end. And then the ever illustrious tight end position, which has been so fruitful for us this year. Tucker Kraft last week is chalk, absolutely smashed, like a 70-yard touchdown, which was absolutely insane. Got another touchdown. Just want a little flip there. But other than that, I mean, just play whatever fits your lineup. If you're looking for an absolute pump play, Jatavian Sanders, Tommy Tremble is out. We will see if Ian Thomas gets activated or not. If Ian Thomas does not get activated, I mean, $2,600 is going to be kind of tough to beat. He would definitely be cashy. Then Jake Ferguson, right now I'm projecting to be the chalk, but if Ian Thomas is not activated, I think Sanders has a chance to pick up some ownership because he is free. Like, if you want to play Lamar Jackson, you want to play Derrick Henry types of guys this week, it's just one way to do it. Just punt tight end. Other than that, Jake Ferguson would be my favorite option in cash right now. Brock Bowers, you have the money for him. Him and George Kittle are the best tight ends in the league right now. Trey McBride is okay. I mean, he's good tight end, but I mean, $5,700, a little expensive. Tucker Kraft. I mean, what's there to say really? I mean, they all get around 5 targets per game. I mean, there's just not much separating them. They're not elite talents, but they're on the field. They're on offenses with quarterbacks that can get them the football. They have good matchups. Baltimore Ravens are 30th versus tight ends this year. The New Orleans Saints are 24th, but I hate looking at tight end DVP stats because it's just so noisy. So, I mean, these are guys that are viable. There's other tight ends that I think you could sprinkle in, but I wouldn't sweat this position too much. And if we want to look at defense, I usually just try to get ones in low totals or low implied team totals against. Let's have the opponent's stats here. So if you're looking for teams that get sacked a lot, Deshaun Watson has a bit of a fetish for that right now, 5.2 sacks per game. Or the Cleveland Browns. I mean, the Browns defense at $2,600 just because Jalen Hurts and company, they'll turn the ball over a bit. Also 3.5 sacks per game. I mean, they're decent. Like, I just usually throw in just a random one. Looking at teams that give up sacks, get some turnovers, low totals. I mean, it's pretty much the gist of it. All right, heading back over to our build here. Let's just try to fill in these last 4 spots. We don't have a ton of money, only $4,300, so we have to save some cash somewhere. If you want to go with Jake Ferguson, which a lot of people will at tight end this week, puts us in a bit of a bind at $4,100, but we can probably get a 2K defense in here. But I think the Browns, I think they can get some sacks with Myles Garrett, probably get a turnover or 2. Like, they're not a complete dumpster fire pick, I don't think. I mean, it's a higher implied team total, which is the concern. They're also on the road. Saints defense, maybe. Buccaneers versus Rattler, like that might not be the worst play in the world. It's a lower implied team total. We have Bucky Irving. I mean, I guess there's some correlation there. That'll leave us with $4,800, which I know we can do because we have Ray McLeod down there at $4,300 if we want to go with one of their pass catchers because we don't have one of them yet. And that would leave us $5,400 in the flex spot, which does not put us in a bad range by any means. We have Jacoby Myers. He ends up playing Antonio Gibson. I know we didn't talk about him, but he's going to be the starting running back in New England this week. Darnell Mooney, we can afford as well. Like, this is really not that bad of a range. So I'll let you guys use your imagination. If you wanted to completely punt with Sanders this week, it would probably give us a little bit more room here. $7,800. You can play Alvin Kamara. You can play Stephon Diggs. Obviously, you can't play Jaden Daniels in the flex. That'd be fun, though, but we can't do it. Like Evans, Jaden Reed. So, I mean, there's a couple ways you can go for sure. You'd probably play around with it. But I think it's an overall pretty strong-looking build. I mean, we have Lamar paired with Zay Flowers, ran back with Terry McLaurin, Bijan Robinson, Bucky Irving at running back. We had the Buccaneers defense. I actually deleted like 2 players there, but we had Jake Ferguson, the tight end spot, and Ray McLeod, a wide receiver at 3. And that is not a bad-looking build for a single entry type contest. But keep in mind, like I said, this is just to try to show you guys the process I would go through when I'm trying to build like a single entry lineup. You can apply that to your own favorite plays and build it together yourself. And this is not the only way to win by any means. I would never act like that. But that's just the way I've had success, and it's what I feel comfortable doing, so that's how I do it. All right, let's get the optimizer set up here just to run a quick 20 or raw dog this. Just a little bit of randomness. I won't play with the max exposure. Let's make the tight end ineligible at flex. And for just quick stacks here, I mean, if you're actually doing multiple lineups and stuff, I would take more time, but just for the sake of doing this, we can specify teams. Like if I have Lamar Jackson, Jay Daniels, I wouldn't force a stack all the time, but we're just gonna make that pretty simple there, and we will roll with it. All right, looks like we got our 20 to run here, so let's see which players are popping up a lot. And yeah, as you can see, Jake Ferguson, Deontay Johnson, Bucky Irving getting jammed in over 75% of the lineups, and yeah, these guys are gonna be very popular on Sunday just due to the pricing and how they're projected. I would assume most places aren't going to be too far off in projections anyway. These do have some randomness on it. I don't think these are the exact projections, but Lamar Jackson, Bijan, a lot of Stephon Diggs. Cortland Sutton, kind of surprised he's coming in so much. I might have to take a second look at him, but Darnell Mooney, Zay Flowers, Bateman, Hubbard, Sanders, Daniels. Like, yeah, I don't think we should be too surprised about those players. Tons of Carolina, Baltimore, Atlanta, Dallas, Tampa Bay coming in. Said Atlanta's probably got a decent chance to be in the highest owned team. I don't think we're too far off of that, at least in these builds. I mean, ownership-wise, I do think Atlanta will come in extremely high, although the Bucky Irving ownership could knock down Bijan a tad. But yeah, these are, I mean, yeah, I'm not surprised at the top two games as well. Carolina, Atlanta, Dallas, Detroit. Pretty high scoring potential, at least in the over-unders and popular plays in general. I would say Carolina, Atlanta is going to be more popular than Dallas and Detroit just because they're a lot cheaper. But I think you guys get the gist of that. Just to make sure we're following our rules here, like I wouldn't force this in if I was actually building, but we did specify we need a pass catcher. And it looks like in this one, we got Rashad Bateman paired with Lamar. This one has Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers in the next one. Jaden Daniels getting paired with Zach Ertz. So if you wanted to make it 2, you could, but I would reserve that for pocket passers. But with that being said, that's all I got for this week's video. So hope you enjoyed it. If you did, or even if you didn't, make sure you like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. If you want to check out all the extra content, you know where to find it. Link we found down below. Do I show the best, and I'll see you all next time.